Hello, and welcome to Rock Your Block and today's segment of Beyond the Classroom. I'm your host, Gene Levinson, creator of the Smart Noter apps that help kids find what they missed in the classroom. Today we'll focus on the importance of education to every community and some of the specific programs at George Mason University that focus on science, technology, engineering, and math that are vitally important to the public education system, not only in Northern Virginia, but also throughout the nation. My guest serves both as Dean and Professor at the George Mason University Department of Education and Human Development. Please welcome Dr. Mark R. Ginsberg to the show.
Thank you, Gene. Nice to be with you.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
So tell us about your career path and how you ended up with your interest in education.
Sure, it's an interesting story and really a bit of an odyssey because my background is in psychology, and I studied human development both as an undergraduate and a graduate student, and studied clinical psychology and did clinical work for many years focusing on children and families. And one of the things I learned in doing clinical work is that, as the old saying goes, an ounce of prevention is really better than a pound of cure. And I led my way, that led to my interest in education, the thinking that if we can provide children as they grow and develop with a good start, we can provide them with a healthy start, we can provide them with a very capable beginning and continue that beginning over the course of their school career, that maybe we can actually prevent some of the challenges that children and families faced. And if we engage families in the education of their children and engage families in our school systems, that perhaps we'd create a better environment for children throughout their life. And so I gravitated to education, interestingly.
Great. I mean, that actually touches on several of the topics that I was hoping that we could discuss today.
Sure.
So in the State of the Union address back in February of 2013, President Obama called on Congress to expand access to high-quality education at the preschool level, right? So that every child in America would have early access. He said that in states that make it a priority to educate our youngest children, studies show students grow up more likely to read and do math at grade level, to graduate high school, but also to hold a job and to form more stable families on their own. So why is exposure to reading and math so important in the early years?
Well, the president got it just right. That's really the first place to begin, that when we give and provide children with young children in particular with a high quality early beginning, when we provide them with an enriching home environment, when we engage parents in their learning, when we focus on their development from an early age, their health and development, that we give them a head start, we give them a good beginning. And if we continue that with a high quality early education, we're really providing the context for them to soar as they enter school. Now, whether it's in math and science, whether it's in reading and literature, whether it's in language acquisition, or frankly, whether it's in the domain that I like to call social and emotional development, helping children to get along with each other, they're all prerequisites for success later in life. And so, as you suggest, President Obama has gotten it just about right conceptually. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten it quite right financially, because we haven't provided the funds so that all of our children have the opportunity to engage in that high quality early experience provided to them, and really as a community responsibility. We're getting there, but we're not there yet.
So where should the funds go? Should they go to the Office of Head Start, for example, or what would be some of the places?
You know, I think we had a famous first lady at one time who said it takes a village. And I think that really was the right approach, that it takes a village to educate a child. And so it's not a matter of placing funds in any one place. It's a matter of providing opportunities for all of our children through our public schools, through our community-based service organizations, through knowing that many children don't have the opportunity to attend a formal preschool, but providing families with the opportunity for an enriching home environment are all important. So there's, in my view, not a single strategy, because it's a very multidimensional set of issues, but there are many strategies.
Right. So there's something called school readiness, and the Office of Head Start defines that as children possessing the skills, knowledge, and attitudes necessary for success in school and for later learning and for life.
Right.
So it's not just about the subject matter, is it? It's really about the social and emotional components as well.
It's about all those things. We can't really substitute for learning and what we call the cognitive sphere of development, the thinking and the learning and the ability to understand are all very important. But we also know that there are other elements of development, probably three major areas that I can think of. One is the biological development, because children are growing, and they're growing really rapidly in the early years.
And they're changing.
And they're changing. In fact, studies tell us that the growth in the brain itself is most rapid during the first 3 years of life and continues to grow at very rapid rates during the first 8 years of life. And so the health issues of keeping children healthy and providing them with good nutrition, and providing them with a safe environment are all very important. But then also important, as you were suggesting, is what we would call the cognitive sphere, learning, but also in addition to health and the biology of growth and the cognition, the development of understanding, is the development of interactions and being able to...
Human interactions. With their peers, with the teacher.
With their peers, with their teacher, even paying attention and being able to get along with others, but to understand and be part of the environment in which they're part of. And so
how to focus.
How to focus, absolutely important too. So it's all those things. And in the early years, what we tend to focus on is not one, but all of those. If we lose sight of any of them, then we're not really serving the child well.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. So one of the big problems nowadays is that we have a huge emphasis on testing and on grades.
We sure do.
And unfortunately, if a student gets a bad grade, that's negative reinforcement. And then the child thinks, oh, I'm not good at this. There's a lot of anxiety, there's stress, sometimes even serious problems like depression and so on.
Yeah, for sure.
And the child might develop kind of a fixed mindset, like, this is who I am, this is what I'm capable of, I can't do this, I'm not good at this. And what we really need is a growth-oriented mindset that if you work hard, you get better at what you do, and so on. How can we help kids with that?
Well, it's important that we understand how kids are learning, and it's important, I think, that we use the tests that we provide and the tests that adults give to kids as a way to impact in a positive way, that is in the service of learning, is how I would describe it. I think, though, there's a real difference sometimes between learning on the one hand and performance on the other. And sometimes we become, in education today, in trying to understand the positive nature of the learning experience, we become focused on how kids can perform rather than really understanding how it is that they learn. We focus on tests. And tests tell us certain things, but I'm not sure it tells us as much about their learning as does looking at a child somewhat more holistically and helping us as adults to understand their ability to understand, their ability to grasp concepts, and their ability to take concepts and then apply them in real-world situations.
Is that something that the teacher would do?
I think it's something that a teacher does. I think the key point for me is that we need to look not at a single point of data, that is how a child might do on a test. Here in the Commonwealth, we put a lot of stock into standards of learning tests. That's a metric, it's an important barometer, but it's not the only barometer. That there are other additional data points that we need to bring in so that we really understand a child's learning.
But unfortunately, that the standards of learning becomes the main focus of the activity, because it's how people are judged, it's how the teachers are judged, it's how the students are judged, and there's too much focus on that. I mean, I really agree with you that there are other areas that are also important.
Yeah, I think an over-focus on that doesn't serve learning. And again, my perspective is that we ought to use assessment in the service of learning, not in the assessment of adults trying to understand something that's important to them, but adults understanding something that's important for the child.
For the child, right, exactly. So, I do a lot of tutoring of high school kids, and I mean, again and again, I see situations in which, the kids, they bring their worksheets from the classroom, and they've dutifully filled in the blanks on these worksheets that are supposed to actually help them to understand the concepts that they're filling in. And the teacher is lecturing, and they're filling in, as they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
When they bring that home, they have absolutely no idea what it means. If I ask them a question about it, they start looking at their notes and they start reading it verbatim. If I ask them something that is paraphrased in a different way, or give them a problem in which to apply this, they're clueless. What can we do about that? I mean, that just seems like a very, very poor way to educate kids.
Yeah, and you and the work that you do are really on the front lines.
I see the problems it creates.
You see the problems it creates, and you also see the consequences of the problems in terms of the anxiety and the angst that not only children suffer, but parents suffer.
Right.
And family, and the impact on families as well. And so, again, I would go back to say that by using a worksheet-based learning model, we learn something about a child's ability to learn. But are we teaching children through that in the ways that we know is most effective for learning? And
right.
I think
not, probably.
Yeah, I think there are probably some alternative ways that can more effectively engage children in their own learning to help them to both understand things more deeply and to understand and to engage more intimately, if you will, with the content. But having said that, there's also a place for some direct instruction and learning, and there's certainly a place for practice, because practice does make perfect in many ways. And so that's not necessarily bad, but I think if we over-rely on that approach, then we may not be doing the very best things that we can for children in terms of their learning.
Right. I mean, there's no one solution to these problems. It's a multifaceted problem, and so it's really important to be considering a lot of different things.
And the other point, as you say that it comes to mind, is that one size doesn't fit all. That what we need to think about...
Each kid is different.
Each kid is different. They're different in terms of where they are in their development, and many kids are different from each other in terms of their style of learning and their ability to learn.
Great. So I want to talk a little bit about the VISTA program briefly before the break. So one of the exciting programs in which George Mason University is playing a leadership role is Virginia Initiative for Science Teaching and Achievement, or VISTA.
Big acronym.
Yeah, it's a good one though. Can you tell us about how this is, changing the game in Virginia and, throughout the country?
Sure. Here in Virginia, in particular in Northern Virginia, we have one of the great science and technology corridors in our nation.
That's for sure.
And our economy is built in many areas, but one of the areas that our economy has had a great reliance on and a great opportunity within is in the technology sector, in the science sector, in the math, engineering, technology arena kind of more generally. And we know that from the workforce studies that George Mason University and others have done in this region, that the need for well-trained personnel in the STEM field, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, will only grow in the future if we continue to grow that element of our economy. And so it's very important that we provide our students in our schools, both in Northern Virginia and frankly from throughout the nation, with opportunities to excel in these fields. And they're fields that are evolving, they're fields that are complex, and because you work in the STEM fields yourself, how difficult it is for many kids. And part of our concept has been that if we can change the game, in quotes, if we can enhance the way in which we provide students from the earliest of years through their high school years with effective approaches to learning in those STEM fields, that it would well serve our children who are students, it will well serve our communities, because our community will be well served about it as well. And so we can talk at some length, if you'd like, about the elements of VISTA, because it truly has been a remarkable program.
Yeah, I'd love to after the break.
Sounds good. We'll come back and do that.
Okay, so we're going to take a short station break, and then we'll be back to hear more about the ways that some of GMU's programs, like VISTA, are helping to support public education. Don't go away.
Pants, pants, pants. I am folding the pants.
Do they go on my head?
Everyday moments can become teaching moments, because learning starts long before school does. Give your child the start they need at bornlearning.org.
Welcome back. You're watching Rock Your Block and today's segment of Beyond the Classroom. Our special guest today is Dr. Mark R. Ginsberg, Dean and Professor at George Mason University's Department of Education and Human Development. Dr. Ginsberg has been kind enough to highlight some of the special programs at GMU that help us to build better tools and strategies to support public education. And we were just talking about VISTA. So could you tell us a little bit more about that program?
Sure. Well, VISTA is a program that we at Mason are very proud of. It's actually the largest federally funded program in the United States at the moment on trying to enhance and strengthen the way in which we teach science in particular in our public schools. It's a program that was funded through the federal government's Department of Education through a program called the I3 Initiative, and I3 is an acronym that stands for Investing in Innovation.
Another acronym.
Well,
Got to have those acronyms.
Got to have those acronyms.
If it's federal government especially.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, this is really a good one, I think, because if we invest in innovation, maybe we can really make a difference. And all of the I3 programs, the Investing in Innovation programs that the federal government has funded, were high potential programs. And in this case, there were about 1,700 applications for a very few number, less than 50 funded projects. And we were very fortunate and feel very proud to have been awarded a federal grant. It's a federal grant that provides for a partnership, first of all, and it's a partnership between 6 major Virginia public universities. Maybe for the first time that's ever happened. And so Mason is the lead university, hopefully not the last. George Mason is the lead university on the project, and then our partners are the University of Virginia and its Curry School of Education, Virginia Commonwealth University, James Madison University, William & Mary University, and Virginia Tech. And so it's a consortium of 6
They're all great schools.
All great schools, and all in different quadrants of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Right, geographically.
Geographically really spread. And so it's a partnership of science educators and others who are involved in the STEM fields who've come together and tried to think and work very directly with our state's public schools to strengthen the way in which science is being taught. And so VISTA has 4 major components, and each of which are really important. And one of the important aspects is it's how those components work together, not separately, which is kind of the secret sauce to make this thing go. So one of the issues that began when we put VISTA together was we wanted to think about what are the key elements that help to make schools successful. What are the essential ingredients for which school success is most predictive about? It turns out there are two factors. One is the capacity of the workforce, that is how well the teachers are teaching and how well prepared the teachers are to teach in a contemporary way. And the second major factor is the leadership of the school and the leadership of the science programs and the leadership in the classrooms. And that's not unlike any organization, Gene. When you think about any business that you know or any business our viewers know today that's successful, usually it's based upon 2 major factors. Are those who are doing the work capable and successful, and those leading the organization in a successful way. And schools are no different than that. So with that as kind of a backdrop, the capacity and the ability of the teachers and the capacity and the ability of the leadership, VISTA has, as I said, 4 main components. One component is based in the early elementary years, from the early childhood years through grade 6. WEB 1, Domain 1. Second is secondary education, middle and high school, and I come back and talk a little bit about each. Third revolves around leadership, and that's working with those who lead science education programs in our public schools, department chairs, science coordinators, principals, central office administrators who have responsibility for the science education component of their school division. And the fourth area, which we think also is important, is a consortium now of every Virginia university, college, or school of education across the state, be it in public or private institutions throughout Virginia, that have programs to teach and train teachers who are going to be teaching science. And so again, four components. Let me go back, though, very briefly for each. At the elementary level, one of the things that we find through about 20 years of research at George Mason and other universities around the country, that elementary educators, although highly motivated and highly skilled in the classroom, tend in today's environment not to have the most contemporary knowledge about science. Some have
subject matter.
Some had very little science education actually in their teacher education programs.
Science has changed a lot also.
Science is changing continually.
Right.
And so the focus of our work with elementary educators is to teach elementary educators to be more proficient in the content so that they can be more effective in their instruction.
Because the kids need that foundation.
The kids need that foundation.
Right.
And to help teachers to be more active and engaged.
That's like
with their
scaffolding,
students.
right? Isn't that what it's called?
That's a great word. It is like scaffolding. It's like climbing the ladder, so that as kids go from kindergarten to 3rd grade, and 3rd grade to 5th grade, and 5th grade into the junior and senior high schools, they're scaffolding, they're learning as they go. Great concept. So the second area is our secondary teachers. And in Virginia we have a tremendous issue, as does every state, with turnover of teachers, and we believe that
the dropout rate is higher than it is for students, unfortunately.
The dropout rate's really pretty high. About the national data tells us that about half of all beginning teachers leave teaching within the first year of teaching, and the majority of those who actually leave within the first year. So we believe that it's important to provide supports for teachers in those first few years of teaching.
Sure.
So that they can be nurtured as educators, they can learn new and effective things, and they can work with each other and with more experienced mentor teachers that are who in their schools,
Right.
and others who could
Right.
help them to continually be successful in their classroom. And so we focus on new teachers.
Right. So the teacher training piece is really critical. right?
Critical.
And
Essential.
so is that something that's done by experienced teachers, or is it something that's done by administrators, or is there sort of a partnership between the two? Or
Yeah,
how-
it's a
how does that work?
collaboration.
Because the problem that I have with sort of the top-down model is that that's actually one of the reasons that teachers are often leaving, is that
Exactly.
they feel that they're not being treated like professionals in the classroom. They're there because they care about what they're doing, they're passionate about what they're doing, but they feel like they're being treated,
Yeah.
like.
And the more support we can give them, the better off it is. And so in Vista, we provide all of the teachers who are a part of our Vista program, and there are hundreds throughout the state. In fact, Vista is in over 80 school divisions in the Commonwealth
Wow,
of Virginia.
that's great.
And Vista is touching almost every child in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. So it's a very broad statewide program. And teachers who are part of the Vista experience have the opportunity to have mentors and coaches come into their classroom regularly on a monthly basis.
Oh.
And they're provided with manipulatives and resources and opportunities to network with each other. So A, they're not alone, and two, they have viable, good, nurturing models who are there to assist them, not to assess them,
Right,
to assist them.
Right.
Different words, to assess and assist.
A huge difference,
Huge
actually.
difference. And they're there to nurture them and support them. At the elementary level, we do something a little different. We bring elementary teachers together in the summer, and they become the staff at science camps. They become the staff
how fun,
at camps
actually.
that are being run at the 6 major universities that are part of Vista. And we use the camps for two purposes. Certainly we use them as an enriched learning experience for elementary age children, but we also use it as a learning laboratory for teachers who come and work also with experienced mentors, with our faculty and the faculty of the other major universities in the Commonwealth. And it's a laboratory for learning, a laboratory learning for elementary students and a learning laboratory for our teachers. And then they too are provided with supports over several academic years. And so the key thing about Vista is it's not a one-off. It's not a program that is intermittent. It's a program that's continuous.
Terrific. Well, so another huge component that I see again when I'm tutoring is the critical role that parents play in all of this.
Clearly do.
I mean, parents, they set the expectations, they set the example as role models. Right. And I just see it again and again that the kids who do really well and who are motivated and who are disciplined about what they're doing are getting that, from their parents in a positive way. There's a positive interaction there.
Yeah, I think there are two things. One is to engage families, and good schools, I think, effectively, successfully, and continually engage with families. I think it's one of those prerequisites, if you will, for school success. The second piece is that I think when children participate in Vista, they're participating in a program that's active and engaged. We're teaching teachers to be inquiry-based in their approach, is how we call it. And inquiry-based learning essentially
says,
a little
bit, right?
it's a wonderful strategy, and it's really not rocket science. It's about involving children, involving students actively in their learning. It's not telling them about science, it's giving them opportunities to experience
to do science.
Right.
That's what scientists do.
It's you know what it is, it's exactly right. What Vista tries to do is to make every student in our classrooms a scientist.
Right.
Not to be told about science, but to be actively involved with science.
And that gets them to buy into it.
Well, and more than that, they enjoy it.
Well, that too, right?
They enjoy it. And more than enjoy it, they're learning.
Right.
Miraculously, they're learning, they're enjoying what they're doing, they're learning what we're doing. And we find that when kids enjoy what they do and they learn, they then want to learn more.
Right.
And they want to be engaged more. And that's the secret. That's the secret to helping kids to become more proficient in science, is for them to be engaged, enjoyable, learn, and they want to learn more, and they actually become more active in their learning.
Right. It seems to me that the rallying cry that we really should have now is make me care. In other words, make the kids care about what they're learning, because if the switch is off, they're not going to be learning at all.
Yeah.
And we need to connect what we're teaching them about with what they care about, so that they do care.
I think it's about caring. I think it's about involving them in their learning. And it's much more difficult for a teacher to engage actively children in exercises that are involving, and to use a word connecting with the subject, than to just tell them about the subject. And that's why we think it's important that teachers have content proficiency and proficiency in teaching strategies that are involving, engaging,
teaching skills,
caring, and connecting. Yeah.
Great.
And that's what VISTA is about. It's about trying to bring that kind of model of teaching. And what we find is that the most successful schools, not just in the country, but the most successful schools in the world, where children are actually learning and they're performing well on standardized tests.
Which is a goal.
Which is, well, it's an outcome, but it's not teaching for the test.
Right.
It's about teaching kids science so that when they get to the test
reflects what they've actually learned.
The test reflects their learning, and they actually perform well.
Right.
And the best schools in the world are doing this.
Right. So we've got about a minute left. Are there any other programs that you wanted to highlight very quickly?
Well, George Mason's College of Education and Human Development has 28 academic programs, and about a third of the teachers in Northern Virginia, about 50% of the school leaders, are graduates of our programs. And we're so proud of the schools in this region. We're so proud of the quality of the public schools in Northern Virginia. And we're so proud of our relationship both to the quality experience that children have because of our graduates being so predominant in the schools, but also our engagement and partnership with the schools. All of our teacher candidates who come and study education at George Mason are involved in the public schools of Northern Virginia. They get a great experience. Hands-on experience in some of America's very best public schools. And I think, we as a community, we in our community, support our schools really unlike almost any community in the country. And the support that we provide, we can be critics. It's okay to be critical of elements. We're critical friends, if you would, but the key thing is that we're friends. And as we at Mason link with our partners, as we link with our community, we link with families in our area, we hope that we are part of the asset that is the public education system in Northern Virginia in particular.
Yeah,
so
great.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you for being here. Looks like we've run out of time again. As usual, the time passes far too quickly. There's a lot more that I wanted to cover, but well. Want to thank again Dr. Mark Ginsberg for sharing his perspectives on public education and the roles played by colleges like GMU in both finding and implementing new ways to improve public education, both locally and throughout the nation. It's been a genuine pleasure to have Dr. Ginsberg as our guest today. Please join us for the next segment of Rock Your Block, Beyond the Classroom. I'm your host, Gene Levinson. Thanks for watching.